I came back from Denver 24 hours early to save my marriage. But I stopped just outside the living room when I heard the tripod click. My husband was not just sleeping with my coworker. He was rehearsing a script to destroy my reputation. They had the camera ready, waiting for me to walk in and scream so they could paint me as the crazy wife. They did not know I was already there, listening in the dark. My name is Brooke Callahan, and at 34 years old, I prided myself on seeing the angles that other people missed. As the operations manager for Wexler Ridge Solutions here in Columbus, Ohio, my entire career was built on predicting failures before they happened. I was the person you called when you needed a safety net. Yet, as I stood in the shadowed foyer of my own home, gripping the handle of my rolling suitcase, I realized I had missed the biggest red flag of my life. I had flown in from Denver 24 hours early because the second half of the compliance seminar had been canceled due to a venue issue. I had caught the last flight out, thinking only of my husband, Grant Hollis. I thought we could use the extra day. I thought I could fix the distance that had been growing between us like a silent fracture. I was wrong. The house was supposed to be dark. It was not. Light spilled from the living room, cutting a sharp yellow rectangle across the hardwood floor. I did not call out. Some instinct, primal and sharp, clamped a hand over my mouth. I left my suitcase by the coat rack and took a step forward, staying in the gloom of the hallway. That was when I heard the distinct clink of ice against crystal, followed by Grant's voice. It was cold. It was devoid of the warmth I had tried so hard to rekindle. Hit record the second she steps in, Grant said. I froze. I peered around the edge of the doorframe. The living room had been staged. My favorite armchair was pushed back to clear a wide angle. In the center of the room, facing the front door where I was supposed to enter, stood a tripod with Grant's smartphone mounted on top. The red recording light was not on yet, but the lens was waiting. Two of our friends, people we had hosted for barbecues and game nights, were standing by the fireplace. They were not drinking. They were standing on tape marks, like actors waiting for a cue. Then a voice floated out from the speakerphone on the coffee table. It was a woman's voice, smooth and professional, a voice I heard every day in the break room at Wexler Ridge. "Don't get soft," the voice said. "Let her spiral, the messier the better. We need the outburst on camera, or HR won't touch it." My stomach dropped. It was Tessa Laird. Tessa, who sat 3 cubicles down from me. Tessa, who had brought me a latte when I was stressed last week. She was not just sleeping with my husband, she was directing him. Grant nodded at the phone. He ran a hand through his hair, messing it up intentionally to look distressed. He took a deep breath, transforming his face from calculating to concerned in a split second. He looked at the empty space where he thought I would be. "I just want to help you. Brooke, everyone is worried about you." He practiced. His tone was perfect. It was the voice of a loving, long-suffering husband dealing with a hysterical wife. "You haven't been yourself for months. We can't go on like this." I felt the blood drain from my face. They were not just planning a breakup. They were manufacturing a breakdown. If I walked through that door now, tired and confused, and saw an ambush, I would scream. I would cry. I would look exactly like the unstable woman they were painting me to be, and they would have it all in high definition. I did not scream. I did not step into the light. I stepped back. One silent step, then another. I grabbed my purse but left the suitcase. I moved through the shadows of the kitchen, unlocked the sliding glass door, and slipped out into the humid Ohio night. I got into my car and drove without turning on the headlights until I was down the block. I checked into a generic hotel near the airport 10 minutes later. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I did not cry. Tears were a luxury for women who were safe. I was not safe. I was being hunted. This was not an affair. This was a social execution, and I had exactly 1 night to prepare my defense. The hotel room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale air conditioning, but my mind was entirely elsewhere. I sat at the laminate desk, the blue light of my laptop screen the only illumination in the room. I was not crying. I was working. I navigated to the login page for our shared family cloud account. It was something Grant had insisted on 2 years ago, claiming it was for convenience, a way to sync our photos and tax documents. Now, I realized it was just another avenue for surveillance. I typed in the password, my fingers moving with the muscle memory of a wife who had nothing to hide. The dashboard loaded, and I immediately clicked on the Recent Activity tab. My breath hitched. There, sitting at the top of the list, was a new folder created just 5 days ago. It was not named anything innocuous like vacation or taxes. It was titled, with chilling corporate efficiency, Separation Rollout. I double-clicked the folder. Inside, the organization was meticulous. Grant had treated the end of our marriage like a project management exercise. The first file I opened was a spreadsheet labeled Invite and Witness Map. It was color-coded. There were columns for friends, neighbors, and family. But the column that made my throat tighten was the one on the far right, highlighted in red work, HR, and compliance. He had listed specific names at my company, including Tessa Laird. I closed that file and opened a document named Draft Communication Strategy. It was a template for an email, presumably intended for our friends and my family. Brooke has been unstable lately. I read the words on the screen, my voice a dry whisper in the empty room. She is prone to explosive outbursts and paranoia. I am trying to get her help, but she refuses to listen. He was planting the seeds. He was vaccinating everyone we knew against the truth so that when I finally spoke up, I would sound exactly like the crazy woman he was describing. I scrolled down and found a calendar entry. It was a confirmation for a marriage counseling appointment with a specialist in downtown Columbus. The appointment was booked under my name, but the confirmation email address was a burner account I did not recognize. You booked it so I would miss it, I said aloud, the realization landing heavy in my chest. Then you can tell the judge I refused to go. But the most terrifying document was the one simply titled The Script. It was a flowchart. It had branches for every possible reaction I might have. If she screams, look at the floor and apologize. If she throws something, retreat and call her mother. I scrolled to the bottom of the page, and my blood ran cold. There was a contingency labeled Plan B. If she remains calm, the text read, activate Plan B. Accuse her of abusing company access to spy on colleagues. File formal complaint with HR regarding data privacy breach. I leaned back in the stiff hotel chair. They had anticipated everything. If I screamed, I was crazy. If I stayed calm, I was a corporate spy. Tessa Laird had clearly used her knowledge of Wexler Ridge's internal policies to design a trap that would strip me of my career if I tried to maintain my dignity. I reached into my bag and pulled out my encrypted external hard drive. I did not delete a single file. I did not change a timestamp. I simply dragged the entire Separation Rollout folder onto my drive and watched the progress bar fill up green. I needed the metadata intact. I needed to prove not just what they did, but when they planned it. As the copy finished, a cold clarity settled over me. People do not go to these lengths just for an affair. You do not build a flowchart and a witness map just to leave your wife for a coworker. You do this when there is something else at stake. Follow the money, I whispered to the empty room. Grant was not just trying to leave me. He was trying to destroy my credibility so that no one would believe me when I found out what he had really been doing with our finances. He was not protecting a romance. He was protecting a heist. I closed the laptop, my eyes dry and burning. I had the plan. Now I needed to find the motive. I opened a fresh browser window and logged into our primary joint bank account. The emotional shock of seeing the camera and tripod was beginning to calcify into something colder and much more useful. I was an operations manager. My job was to find inefficiencies and risks in complex systems. Tonight, the system was my marriage, and the risk was sitting in my living room with a script in his hand. I bypassed the summary screen and went straight to the transaction history. At first glance, everything looked normal. The mortgage had cleared, the utility bills were paid. But I filtered the search parameters to show outgoing transfers, and a pattern emerged immediately. It was subtle, designed to avoid the text message alerts I had set up for transactions over $1,000. There were 7 transfers in the last month alone, each for exactly $950. They were labeled simply as Hollis Advisory Retainer. Hollis Advisory, I murmured to the empty hotel room. Clever. Grant. Using your own last name to make it look like a family investment. I did not stop there. I navigated to the mortgage tab. My heart hammered against my ribs when I saw the banner across the top of the screen. Application pending home equity line of credit. He was trying to pull $150,000 of equity out of our house. I clicked on the document. It was fully executed. At the bottom of the page was my signature. I leaned in closer to the screen. It looked like my handwriting, the loop of the B, the sharp cross of the T. But when I zoomed in to 400%, the edges of the ink were fuzzy. It was pixelated. I opened a new tab and pulled up our joint tax return from last April. I took a screenshot of my signature there and overlaid it onto the loan document. It was a perfect pixel-by-pixel match. You didn't even try to forge it, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. You just copy-pasted me into debt. He was stealing the house from under me before he even filed for divorce. I switched gears to my credit report. I authorized a one-time pull and waited for the wheel to spin. When the report loaded, my score had dipped by 12 points. There was a new inquiry from a credit card company I did not use. A travel rewards card had been opened in my name 3 weeks ago. I logged into the provider's site using the forgot password function and reset it with my phone. The billing address was not our house. It was a box in a strip mall on the east side of Columbus, a neighborhood I never visited. I opened the latest statement. The transactions read like a diary of his affair. There was a charge for a boutique hotel in Denver for the nights I was at my conference. There was a charge for a diamond tennis bracelet, valued at $3,000. And then, the final insult, a $500 deposit for Sterling and Ash, the upscale steakhouse where he was planning to hold his little intervention dinner tomorrow night. He was paying for his own victory party with a credit card taken out in my name. But the pièce de résistance was in the public records search. I ran my own name through the Ohio Secretary of State's business database. A result popped up Brookstone Consulting LLC. It had been incorporated 10 days ago. The registered agent was me. The address was the same P.O. box. A business line of credit had already been established. I needed to know who paid the filing fee. I traced the transaction ID back through the portal. It was a sloppy mistake, born of arrogance. The $100 registration fee had been paid not by the new fraudulent credit card, but by a Visa ending in 4412, Grant's personal debit card. Got you, I said. Grant was not just cheating on me. He was building a life raft out of my credit score. He planned to ruin my reputation with the video, get me fired with Tessa's help, and then leave me saddled with the debt of a shell company and a drained mortgage while he walked away with the cash. I closed the laptop lid. I did not feel the urge to scream anymore. Screaming was for victims. I was an auditor now. I had the logs. I had the timestamps. I had the digital fingerprints of his crime. I would not confront him with tears. I would confront him with a felony. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I called Maya Greer. Maya was not just my best friend since college. She was a senior paralegal at one of the most aggressive litigation firms in the city. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep but instantly alert when she heard the tone of mine. "Brooke," she asked. "What's wrong?" "You're supposed to be in Denver." "I'm in a hotel near the airport," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Grant is planning to divorce me. He has a script, a camera crew, and a fake timeline of my mental instability. Also, he forged my signature on a home equity loan application. I need a referral. I need a shark." Maya did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask me to elaborate. She switched modes instantly. "Be at the offices of Knox and Associates at 8:30. Maya said, "Ask for Adriana. I'll text you the address. Do not," I repeat, "do not go home." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room that smelled of mahogany and expensive intimidation. Adriana Knox walked in. She was a woman who looked like she could dismantle a bomb without smudging her eyeliner. She did not offer me coffee. She sat down, opened a notepad, and looked me in the eye. "Maya briefed me," Adriana said. "This isn't just a divorce. This is an orchestrated takedown. Grant wants a reaction. He is banking on you screaming, crying, or throwing a vase. If you give him that, you validate his narrative that you are unstable." "He won't get a tear," I said. "He'll get an audit." We spent the next 3 hours building what Adriana called the truth binder. We printed everything I had harvested from the external hard drive. We organized it by timestamp. We overlaid the metadata of the separation rollout folder with my flight records to prove I was out of state when the plan was hatched. We printed the credit report showing the fraudulent inquiries. Then I made the call that would turn this from a domestic dispute into a corporate nightmare. I put my phone on speaker and dialed the direct line for the IT director at Wexler Ridge. "This is an emergency security report." I told him, "I need you to pull the access logs for my user profile from the last 48 hours. Specifically, look for IP addresses originating from my home network while my geolocation shows me in Denver." The keyboard clattered on the other end. A moment later, the IT director's voice came back, tight and worried. "I'm seeing multiple logins," he said. "Tuesday night at 11:14, Wednesday morning at 6:30, all from the same residential IP. Brooke? There's more. A rule was created in your Outlook settings yesterday. Read it to me," I said, my pen hovering over the legal pad. "It's an auto-forward rule," he explained. "Any email containing the keywords finance, personnel, or strategy is being blind copied to an external Gmail account. L7734@gmail. I looked at Maya. She wrote Laird on a sticky note. L for Laird. 7734 was HELL upside down on a calculator. It was juvenile. It was exactly Tessa. "Log it," I commanded. "Preserve the chain of custody. I'm flagging this as a potential credential theft and hostile insider threat." Adriana nodded approvingly. She picked up her phone and dialed the courthouse clerk. "We are filing an emergency motion," Adriana said to the room. "We are freezing the marital assets based on credible evidence of fraud and dissipation. I'm also flagging the equity line application as identity theft. If the bank tries to disburse that $150,000, they will be walking into a federal crime." I opened my laptop and went to our payroll portal. I removed the joint checking account from my direct deposit settings and routed my paycheck to a new account I had opened online 10 minutes prior. I locked my credit files at all 3 bureaus. I was systematically severing every financial artery Grant had attached himself to. By noon, the binder was 3 inches thick. It contained the script, the witness map, the fake loan, and the IT logs proving corporate espionage. Maya closed the binder and tapped the cover. Her face was grim, but there was a fierce satisfaction in her eyes. "He wanted to tell a story about a crazy wife," Maya said. "He wanted to make you a tragic anecdote at office parties. We aren't going to let him. They want to turn you into a story. So we are going to turn them into a case." I sat in the nondescript gray sedan I had rented an hour ago, parked 3 houses down from my own driveway. Through the tinted windshield, I watched my husband perform the role of the century. Grant was standing on a step stool, taping one corner of a glittery banner to the porch overhang. It spelled out, "Welcome home," in cheerful, oversized letters. To the neighbors walking their dogs. He looked like a devoted spouse preparing for his wife's return from a grueling business trip. To me, he looked like a hunter setting a snare. I glanced down at the notebook on the passenger seat. There was one phone number listed in the metadata of the shared folder that did not belong to Grant or me. It was the number that had received the test notification for the security camera system. I dialed it, blocking my caller ID. It rang 3 times. Then, the voicemail picked up. "Hi, you've reached Tessa." The voice chirped, bright and professionally vacant. "I'm away from my desk or on another line. Leave a message." I ended the call before the beep. I did not need to leave a message. I needed to vomit. Tessa Laird. I closed my eyes and saw her face clearly. She was the people operations partner at Wexler Ridge. She worked in the office next to the break room. I remembered the vendor gala 3 months ago. She had gripped my hand with a warmth that felt genuine at the time. "You are the most reliable person here. Brooke," she had told me over a glass of cheap Pinot Grigio. "If anything ever happens to the ops structure, I don't know what we'd do." I opened my laptop again, tethered to the hotspot on my phone. I needed to understand why an HR partner was involved in my divorce. I dug deeper into the archived emails on the drive I had cloned. I searched for Tessa's name in the body text of Grant's drafts. I found a thread dated 2 weeks ago. The subject line was Performance Review Strategy. "We need to document the outbursts." Tessa had written from her personal email. "If we can establish a pattern of instability, I can push for a mandatory administrative leave pending a fitness for duty evaluation. Once she is suspended, her access to the system is revoked. That is when we move the assets." The air in the car suddenly felt too thin. This was not just about the house or the savings account. They were coming for my career. Tessa was using her knowledge of Wexler Ridge's disciplinary protocols to engineer my firing. A suspension for mental instability would mark me. It would kill my security clearance. It would make me unemployable in operations management anywhere in the state. I read on. If she fights back. Another email read, "We pivot to a data breach accusation. We say she used her admin privileges to stalk us. I can verify the policy violation from my end. It becomes a termination for cause. No severance. No unemployment. And since she will be fired for misconduct, the prenup clause regarding criminal behavior affecting household income might kick in." My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They had turned my own employee handbook into a weapon. The work trip to Denver had never been just a conference. It was where they finalized this blueprint. While I was sitting in seminars learning about risk compliance, Grant and Tessa were likely in a hotel room, drafting the schedule of my destruction between room service orders. They wanted to use HR to bury me. They wanted to use the company's policies to strip me of my badge and my dignity. I looked back at the house. Grant had finished hanging the banner. He stepped back, admiring his handiwork, probably imagining how satisfying it would be to record my breakdown beneath those happy letters. "Okay," I said to the silence of the car. "You want to play by the employee handbook? Let's play." If Tessa wanted to bring human resources into my marriage, I would bring my marriage into human resources. But I would not be the one leaving the building with a cardboard box. I put the car in gear and drove away slowly, leaving the banner flapping in the wind. I had a dinner reservation to make. I pulled my phone from my purse and typed the message that would seal their fate. Flight delayed due to mechanical issues. I wrote, "Stuck in Denver for another night. Will be home tomorrow evening." I watched the 3 dots of his response appear almost instantly. "Oh no. Babe, I miss you so much. Hurry home." I put the phone down on the passenger seat. He was probably high-fiving Tessa right now. They thought they had bought another 24 hours to perfect their lighting and rehearse their lines. In reality, they had just bought me the time I needed to change the venue. I was not going to walk into a dark house. I was going to walk into a spotlight of my own choosing. I called Sterling and Ash, the steakhouse where Grant had made the reservation on the fraudulent credit card. "This is Brooke Callahan." I told the maitre d', "My husband has a reservation for the party room tomorrow night. I need to make an adjustment. Keep the main table, but I also want to book the private dining suite that connects via the sliding partition. I need it for a sensitive presentation. With the stage set, I curated the audience." I called my mother, Janet Callahan. "Mom, meet me at the restaurant tomorrow." I said, "Do not ask why. Just promise me you won't say a word until I tell you to." Next, I called Noah Briggs. Noah was the Switzerland of our office, neutral, unimpeachable, and obsessed with policy. "Noah, I need a favor," I said. "I need you to come to dinner, and I need you to bring someone from the compliance team. Tell them it involves a potential breach of the ethics code regarding vendor relations and internal data security. Tell them to come as your +1, but to bring their notepad." Maya was listening on the other line, coaching me through the logistics. "Remember the rule," Maya said, her voice sharp in my ear. "Do not explain yourself. Do not defend yourself. You walk in, you put the binder on the table, and you sit down. Let the paperwork do the screaming." "I got it," I said. "Adriana has the paperwork ready," Maya added. "The temporary restraining order is drafted. It freezes the accounts and restricts him to communication through counsel only. But Brooke, the second you drop that binder, he is going to panic. He will try to run, or he will try to delete things." I thought about that. Grant worked as a senior analyst at Halcyon Fleetwear. He was arrogant about his clearance level. He wore his ID badge on a lanyard even on weekends, dangling it like a Medal of Honor. That badge was his key to the servers. If he panicked, he would use it to remote wipe his devices or transfer the funds he had already embezzled. I opened the file on my laptop labeled Wexler Ridge Employee Handbook. I navigated to the section on conflict of interest and moral turpitude. I memorized the clause about gross misconduct involving company resources. Then I looked up the similar policy for Halcyon Fleetwear, which was publicly available. "He won't be able to delete anything," I said, a cold plan forming in my mind, "because he won't have access." "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "I am going to take his badge," I said. "He wears it everywhere to show off. If I take it in front of witnesses and in front of a compliance officer, he can't claim he lost it. He becomes a security risk immediately." "That is bold," Maya said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I like it." I looked at the truth binder sitting on the hotel bed. It was not just a stack of papers anymore. It was a weapon. I was not going to that dinner to fight for my marriage. I was not going to argue about feelings or betrayal or the nights he spent in hotels with Tessa. I was going there to correct the record. They wanted to paint me as the dangerous, unstable wife. By the time dessert was served, the official record would show exactly who the dangerous ones really were. I sat in the passenger seat of my rental car in the parking lot of Sterling and Ash, 10 minutes before the curtain was set to rise. I was not fixing my makeup. I was configuring the voice recorder app on my phone to upload automatically to the cloud every 30 seconds. I did not need a hidden camera like Grant. I needed a chain of evidence that could survive a court subpoena. I opened the laptop one last time to review Grant's script. I needed to memorize his triggers so I would not step on the landmines he had planted. I found the section labeled Escalation Point. "If she denies the spending," Grant had written to himself, "remind her of the incident at the Lakeview Gala. Ask her if she remembers throwing the wine glass." I stared at the screen. The Lakeview Gala was 4 months ago. I had not thrown a wine glass. I had not even attended. I had been at the office until 9 o'clock at night, finishing a quarterly risk assessment. I opened my rideshare history and found the receipt. Wexler Ridge HQ to home, 9:42 p.m. I took a screenshot and dropped it into the folder I had shared with Adriana. I was not going to argue with him about his fake memories. I was going to bury them with geolocation data. Then I saw a file I had missed earlier. It was inside a subfolder named HR Leverage. It was a draft email from Tessa, time-stamped 3 days ago, addressed to the head of Human Resources. "I am filing this formal concern report regarding Brooke Callahan." The draft began. Following our team trip to Denver, Brooke made vague but menacing comments about burning the department down if she did not get her bonus. Given her recent erratic behavior, I feel unsafe. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a cold, vibrating anger. Tessa was not just covering her tracks. She was framing me for workplace violence. She was preloading a reason to fire me so that when I reacted to the affair, it would look like the final snap of a dangerous employee. I texted Noah Briggs. Did Tessa say anything to the team about me being unstable? Noah's reply came back in less than a minute. She asked if I had noticed you sweating a lot lately. She said you seemed manic. Brooke, what is going on? She is seeding the ground, I whispered. I looked at the rearview mirror. Noah's car had just pulled in. He was not alone. A tall woman in a dark suit got out of the passenger side. I recognized her immediately. It was Sarah Jenkins from corporate compliance. She was not a friend. She was an algorithm in a blazer. She did not care about broken hearts, but she cared deeply about broken protocols. I got out of my car and met them at the entrance. I did not hug Noah. I handed Sarah a single sheet of paper. It was the log showing the auto-forwarding rule sending company strategy documents to the external Gmail account. This is happening right now. I told Sarah, my husband and your people operations partner are funneling internal data to a private server to leverage a divorce settlement. I am about to walk in there and expose the financial fraud. I need you to witness the data breach. Sarah looked at the paper, then at me. Her expression was hard. If that email rule is active, Sarah said, her voice low and dangerous, then this is no longer a civil matter. It is a corporate investigation. I'm coming in. I nodded. I had my team. I had my evidence. But I needed one more thing. I needed to disable Grant. I knew him. If he felt cornered, he would try to negotiate. He would try to use his status, his smile, and his position at Halcyon Fleetwear to bluff his way out. He wore his security badge on a lanyard around his neck, even at dinner parties. A constant reminder that he was important, that he had clearance, that he was a man who opened doors. He plans to use the company systems to hide the money he stole. I said to Noah, he thinks he is untouchable because he has that badge. I made a decision then. I would not slap him. I would not throw a drink in his face. Those were the actions of the hysterical wife he wanted me to be. I was going to do something far worse. I was going to dismantle him. I am taking his badge, I said. Noah looked at me, his eyes widening. Brooke, that's theft? No, I said, smoothing my skirt. It's asset protection, and it's the only way to make sure he doesn't delete the history before the forensic accountants get there. I checked my watch. It was 7 o'clock exactly. The welcome home party was starting. I walked through the heavy oak doors of the steakhouse, my heels clicking a rhythm of war against the marble floor. I was not here to make a scene. I was here to close a case. The chatter in the private dining room of Sterling and Ash died the instant I slid the partition door open. It was a sudden, violent silence, the kind that usually follows a dropped tray of glass. Grant was standing at the head of the long mahogany table, a glass of Cabernet in his hand, his face arranged in a mask of tragic concern. He had been mid-sentence, likely spinning the tale of his wife's fragile mental state to the 12 people seated around him. Brooke Grant said, his voice pitching up into a performance of relief. Thank God, I was just telling everyone how worried I've been about you. At the far end of the table, I saw his friend Mark lift a smartphone. The lens was pointed directly at me. Grant had clearly given the signal. Keep it rolling. Mark, I said, my voice steady and projecting to the back of the room. I want a copy of the recording too. Grant blinked, his script momentarily derailed by my lack of hysteria. He took a step toward me, reaching out a hand as if to steady a stumbling child. Honey, you sound manic, Grant said, sliding effortlessly back into character. You're shaking. Is this happening again? Is this like the Lakeview Gala when you threw the wine glass at the waiter 'cause you thought he was laughing at you? A murmur went through the room. I saw pity in the eyes of my neighbor. It was a lie, of course. I had not been at the gala. I had been at work. But Grant was betting that I would scream a denial, which would only make me look defensive. I did not scream. I walked to the center of the room, flanked by my mother, Noah, and Sarah Jenkins from compliance. I carried the heavy black truth binder in both hands. I dropped it onto the table with a heavy, authoritative thud that made the silverware jump. I didn't throw a glass. Grant, I said calmly. I was at the office approving risk assessments. But that doesn't matter. What matters is this. I flipped the binder open to the first tab. It was an enlarged screenshot of the metadata from our shared cloud drive. This folder is titled Separation Rollout, I said, pointing to the projection of the text I had printed. It was created 5 days ago. While you were texting me, I love you. Emojis in Denver. You were building a project plan to divorce me. Grant's face went pale, but he held his ground. You're delusional. You're making things up. I turned the page to the spreadsheet labeled Invite and Witness Map. I looked around at the table, meeting the eyes of the guests one by one. He didn't invite you here tonight because he loves me, I told them. He didn't invite you because he wanted to welcome me home. Look at the column headers. Family witness, neighbor witness, character reference. You aren't guests. You are cast members in a production designed to document my breakdown. The room shifted. The pity in their eyes turned to confusion, then suspicion. Grant tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry choke. This is insanity, he sputtered. She's hacked my files. She's obsessed. Not hacked, I corrected him. Audited? I flipped to the next section. This was the kill shot. It was the log from the Wexler Ridge IT department. This is an auto-forwarding rule created on my work email account. I said, it sends confidential company strategy documents to an external Gmail address. The address is L7734. I looked directly at Tessa Laird, who was sitting 2 seats away from Grant, frozen with a bread roll halfway to her mouth. That's your personal email, isn't it? Tessa, I asked. Grant set it up, but you're the recipient. That makes you an accomplice to corporate espionage. Tessa dropped the bread roll. She grabbed her purse and pushed her chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. I'm not listening to this, Tessa said, her voice shrill. This is a domestic dispute. I'm leaving. I wouldn't do that. A cool voice cut through the air. Sarah Jenkins stepped forward from behind me. She did not look like a dinner guest. She looked like an executioner in a pantsuit. I am Sarah Jenkins, Senior Compliance Officer for Wexler Ridge, she announced. If you walk out that door now, Ms. Laird, this situation transitions from an ethical review to a criminal referral. We have logged the data exfiltration. Sit down. Tessa sank back into her chair, looking small and terrified. Grant, realizing he was losing control of the room, slammed his hand on the table. You have no right, he shouted, abandoning the concerned husband act entirely. You violated my privacy. You went into my personal folders. That is illegal. Adriana Knox, my attorney, stepped out from the shadows near the entrance where she had been waiting. She adjusted her glasses. It is a joint family drive. Grant, Adriana said, her voice bored and precise. Brooke has full administrative rights. There is no expectation of privacy in a shared digital space. It's not a hack. It's community property. And, frankly, your organization skills made the discovery process very easy for us. The guests were silent now. They looked from the binder to Grant, then to Tessa, and finally to me. They realized what they were seeing. This was not a wife falling apart. This was a systematic, documented, and failed attempt to destroy a woman who kept better records than her husband. The silence in the room was brittle, a thin sheet of glass waiting to shatter. Noah Briggs stood up from his seat, adjusting his glasses with the precision of an engineer. He held up his phone, displaying a timeline graph he had generated from the logs I provided. I checked the timestamps against the airline flight manifest, Noah said, his voice level and factual. Brooke was in the air over Kansas when her user profile accessed the sensitive strategy files. The IP address matches the residential gateway of this house. Unless Brooke can teleport, she did not do it. Someone inside this house used her credentials. Tessa Laird looked at Noah, then at Sarah Jenkins, and finally at Grant. She saw the corporate axe falling, and she panicked. The professional veneer she wore at the office dissolved instantly. He told me it was okay. Tessa screamed, pointing a shaking, manicured finger at Grant. Grant said it was fine. He said they were getting a divorce and he needed to secure his assets. I didn't know he was stealing her identity. I was just trying to help. Grant turned on her instantly, his face flushing a deep, ugly crimson. "You liar," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You wrote the email drafts. You told me exactly which policies to exploit to get her fired without severance. You said we needed to provoke a breakdown to bypass the prenup. It was ugly. It was perfect. They were tearing each other apart, two rats fighting on a sinking ship while the water rose around them. The guests at the table recoiled, leaning away from the toxicity radiating from the head of the table. Grant looked at me, his eyes wide and frantic. He seemed to realize suddenly that he was losing the narrative. He slammed his fist onto the table, making the silverware rattle. "Why are you just sitting there?" Grant yelled at me, desperation leaking into his tone. "You were supposed to cry. You were supposed to lose control. Why aren't you screaming?" The room went dead silent. Even the ambient noise from the main dining room seemed to fade away. He had just admitted it. He had confessed to the script in front of 12 witnesses and a running camera. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I did not look at Grant. I looked at the lens of the smartphone his friend Mark was still holding. I didn't cry. I said softly, but I did listen. I pressed play on the audio file I had recorded the night before. Grant's voice, cold and calculating, drifted from the speaker. Hit record the second she steps in. Then Tessa's voice followed. "Don't get soft. Let her spiral, the messier the better." Grant froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking gray and sick. Sarah Jenkins opened her leather portfolio and clicked a pen. The sound was loud in the quiet room. "That is enough," Sarah said. "Ms. Laird, Mr. Hollis, consider this verbal notice of a pending investigation regarding data theft, conspiracy to defraud, and violation of the Employee Code of Conduct. I am logging this incident officially as of right now. Any attempt to access company servers from this moment forward will be flagged as a hostile action." Adriana Knox slid a thick, cream-colored envelope across the mahogany table. It stopped right in front of Grant's wine glass. "And this," Adriana said, "is a temporary restraining order and an immediate asset freeze. Your joint accounts are locked. Your credit cards are dead. You can speak to Brooke only through me. If you come within 500 feet of her or the house, you will be arrested." Grant looked at the papers, then at the camera, then at me. He looked like a man waking up from a dream to find himself in a nightmare. "You wanted to film me falling apart," I said to him, my voice calm and steady. "So today, you get to be filmed. Falling apart." I stood up and walked slowly around the length of the table. I stopped directly in front of him. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. Clipped to his belt was his Halcyon Fleetwear security badge. He wore it everywhere, a symbol of his importance, his access, his power. "Give me the badge." "Grant," I said. "What?" he snarled, his hand moving instinctively to cover the plastic card. "You are under investigation for financial fraud," I said, extending my hand palm up. "And you have a documented history of manipulating digital records to frame people. I am not going to let you log in tonight and wipe the evidence of the money you stole from our accounts. Hand it over. You can't take this." He spat. "It's company property." "Exactly," Sarah Jenkins interjected from across the room. "And as a compliance officer, I am advising you that retaining access privileges while under investigation for fraud is a liability. Give her the badge." Grant lunged forward, his face twisted in rage, his fist clenched. It was a reaction of pure instinct, the lash of a cornered animal, but before he could reach me, Mark, his best friend, the man he had asked to film my humiliation, stepped in between us. Mark put a heavy hand on Grant's chest and shoved him back. "Don't do it, Grant," Mark said quietly, disgust evident in his voice. "Just give her the badge." It is over. Grant looked around the room. He saw no allies. He saw only witnesses. He saw the mother he had charmed looking at him with loathing. He saw his coworkers looking at him with professional disdain. He unclipped the badge from his belt with trembling fingers. He threw it onto the table. It landed on top of the truth binder with a final plastic clatter. He had lost his money, his accomplice, his reputation, and now his keys to the kingdom. Grant's badge still on top of the truth binder. It was a small piece of plastic, but in that moment, it was the heaviest thing in the room. I reached out and picked it up. It felt cheap in my hand, yet it represented his entire identity, his clearance, his ego, and his ability to delete the digital trail of his theft. I did not keep it. I handed it directly to Sarah Jenkins. Sarah produced a tamper-evident evidence bag from her portfolio. She dropped the badge inside and sealed it with a sharp, final rip of the adhesive strip. The sound was louder than a gunshot in the silent room. "I am initiating the lockdown protocol now," Sarah announced, typing rapidly on her tablet. "Mr. Hollis, your access to all Halcyon Fleetwear systems is revoked pending a cross-company ethics review. We are also notifying your compliance officer that you are a person of interest in an active financial fraud investigation involving a Wexler Ridge employee." Tessa Laird made a small, strangled noise in her throat. She looked at the sealed bag, then at Sarah. Am I under investigation too?" Tessa whispered, her voice barely audible. "You manipulated personnel files to frame a coworker," Sarah replied without looking up from her screen. "Your access is suspended. And regarding the quarterly performance bonus you were expecting next Friday, that is being withheld indefinitely to cover potential legal damages." Grant looked up, sweat beading on his forehead. The mention of the bonus seemed to snap him back to reality. He had been counting on that money. I knew he had already spent it in his mind. Probably on the down payment for the new apartment he planned to share with Tessa. "You can't do that," Grant stammered. "My bonus is... It's guaranteed compensation. It has nothing to do with this." Adriana Knox leaned forward, opening a thin file folder she had kept in reserve. "Actually, Grant, it does," Adriana said, her voice smooth and dangerous. "I took the liberty of reviewing your employment contract. Section 4, Paragraph 2, the Morality Clause. Any employee under investigation for felony fraud or conspiracy to damage the reputation of a professional peer forfeits all pending variable compensation. Your company is already freezing the transfer. We sent them the preliminary police report 10 minutes ago." Grant looked at me, his eyes wide and wet with panic. The arrogance was gone. The script was gone. There was only a desperate man watching his golden parachute turn into an anchor. "Brooke, please," he begged, leaning over the table, ignoring the restraining order sitting between us. Can we go outside and talk? Just for 5 minutes. We can work something out. You don't want to ruin my career over a misunderstanding." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had set up a camera to film my destruction. I looked at the man who had forged my signature to steal equity from our home. "I don't negotiate with scripts. Grant," I said coldly. "I work with files." And the file is closed, as if on cue. My phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up and put it on speaker. It was the automated fraud verification line from the bank. "This is the fraud department," the computerized voice announced clearly. "We are confirming that the home equity line of credit application ending in 452 has been flagged as fraudulent. All associated accounts are now frozen pending law enforcement review." The color drained completely from Grant's face. It was real now. This was not just a divorce. This was a criminal record. I stood up. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt lighter than I had in years. I slipped my wedding ring off my finger. I placed it on the table, right next to the court order and the sealed evidence bag containing his badge. The 3 items sat there like a still life of his failure, the marriage he betrayed, the law he broke, and the career he lost. The camera is still rolling. Grant, I said, nodding toward his friend Mark, who was too stunned to lower his phone. Make sure you get a good angle of the empty chair. That is the only part of me you are ever going to see again. I turned and walked out of the private dining room. My mother and my legal team flanked me like a protective detail. I walked through the main restaurant, past the diners enjoying their steaks, past the maitre d' station, and out into the cool night air. I did not look back. Inside, Grant was trapped in a room with his accomplice, his frozen assets, and the undeniable evidence of his own guilt. He had wanted a show. He had wanted to produce a tragedy. Instead, I had given him a procedural drama, and I had just written him out of the series for good. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below with your city or country so we can connect. If you enjoyed seeing Justice Served Cold, please subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, hit the like button, and give us a hype to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to us.